Hey guys, T-Bull here. Today I got a little bit of a deeper dive on the Graf Spee for a Tier 5 German premium quote-unquote cruiser. You can see here's my Von Mueller build. Not particularly advanced. My viewer Jay the Cat has a good idea. I do have the reload for the legendary perk. He switched it over to the extra consumables. Graf Spee does have a heal, so that's actually quite valuable. So if you want to spec Mueller out just for this ship, I would go ahead and use that if you do have him at legendary status. I just haven't gotten around to changing the build. I like to make one build for my commanders and then just keep them on there, so it's just too much bother. But here we do have a match on straight capture the base mode. I'm on the defend the base mode side, which is where I want to be on these matches. If I was in control of all these ships, I would move these ones directly into the cap or right behind it. The ones on the center, generally I'll go back and play behind this cap as well, or you could theoretically kind of cover the middle with an eye on defending the base. You need to defend your base first and foremost on straight capture the base mode, and then worry about finishing off the other ships or potentially capturing the base after you clear this side. If you abandon this side, which a lot of people do, you can lose the game very easily despite being up numerous ships. So if you're in the middle or behind your own base, always capture the base, in my opinion. So we're just going to move ahead forward here. Now the Graf Spee, if you're not familiar with the ship, it's cruiser body, heavily armored cruiser body with battleship guns, German battleship guns in particular. So dispersion is kind of the watchword of the day when you're playing the ship. It's kind of my frustration with the ship. You'll see throughout these two games, there's a lot of RNG, luck, factors that are outside of your control when you're shooting these guns. My preference on cruisers, I guess any ships in general, I like guns that shoot where I want them to shoot. So this ship you're not going to enjoy if you get frustrated by shots missing even though you think you have them aimed properly. But if that doesn't bother you, then you'll see throughout. I mean, you can get some nice massive shots with these guns. These are both 3000 KXP games. The second one is my highest damage game. I don't tend to get a lot of high damage games in this. Right here I could be using the sonar. You can see we did have that Atlanta briefly spotted. There's no reason for me not to be using the sonar. I am getting sonared, and you'll see I do pop it there, and immediately the Atlanta pops up, but we also do have a destroyer here. This would have been nice to have a little intel on. Being this close and kind of moving really slowly to this Fubuki puts me in a very dangerous position. You can see I gun the throttle all the way forward, but I have the ship spec'd out on rudder shift, which I think works in most cases, but this is one of those situations where it potentially could have cost me. Now I had my teammate finishing off that Fubuki, so I switched my sights to the Atlanta, and you can see there that was just a hair shade of a devastating strike, one-shot kill on that Atlanta. So if you're playing a cruiser against a Graf Spee and you're showing them broadside, you're rolling the dice, especially at that range. Look out. I mean, that was essentially a one-shot kill, and it looks like our secondaries finished him off. So this ship is a cruiser killer. I think in real life it was a merchant raider in the Atlantic, and from the little bit that I've read about it, it was pretty successful at doing so. It wasn't really designed, in my understanding, to, fight other armored ships. But in this game, broadside cruisers are what you're trying to find. Now here, this could be a devastating strike. Colorados are kind of your main ship to focus when you're playing the Graf Spee. Those things, I got a pretty good armor angle there. Is it perfect? I don't know. Maybe, maybe not. But that could have, I don't know if he could have one-shot me or not. I mean, he could have definitely wrecked me. He possibly could have one-shot me. But Colorados, I find going against them, they're not the most accurate ship known to man. But when they hit you hard, and there's not a lot you can do. You can angle your armor quite successfully in the ship against cruiser AP shells. In fact, against other cruisers, you're battleship-esque in deflecting those shots. So you can definitely angle your shots against those. You can angle against battleships. It might protect you with the Citadel. The more angling you get, the more layers it has to travel through, and the harder it is to hit the Citadel, but you're going to take some damage. You know, these high caliber guns, Colorado, Nagato, Fuso, any of these ships you're going to be seeing, Queen Elizabeth, these are all going to be able to punch through your armor, so you can't rely on it, and you don't want to get into these close quarters situations, which I think in my first video I kind of noted. You do get into the mentality I'm playing a battleship because you're kind of slowish. You're a little bit faster than most battleships, at least at this tier, but movement-wise, you're slowish. Turret traverse-wise, you're slowish. Dispersion-wise is definitely battleship-esque. And, you know, these are Scharnhorst guns, so if you play that ship, you're going to be getting similar results in terms of accuracy, in terms of dispersion. Now, I do have Norm Scott 16+1 on my inspiration, which makes it as precise as you can really get in terms of inspirations currently. But Von Mueller being a level 8, I think I got 1 or 2 boosts to the accuracy. There's numerous accuracy builds, I believe, or perks, I believe, on the Mueller build. A lot of these cruiser commanders that are kind of offensive oriented have precision boosts, they have dispersion boosts, so you can tighten up the accuracy a little bit more on the ship, but this, as you'll see throughout these replays, this is pretty much what you need to be expecting. Now, from a game point perspective, my team's done our job here. We've cleared out the side. The Colorado's on the run. We have our base defended, and why this is so important on this map is because the bases are in the middle of the map. Alright, they're not behind you where you have inherent layers of protection guarding your base. Sure, your team can sail off and ignore the base on any map, but it's particularly important to defend the base first on this one, because the enemy team can and should get a destroyer or some ship pressuring your cap about 10, 15, 20 seconds, whatever it is, after the start of the match. And luckily it's been a while since this has happened, but I've won games and lost games where people just ignore the base right off the bat, and, you know, 2-3 minutes, whatever it takes to cap, later the game's over, and that is extremely frustrating as a player. You know, I don't want to win games like that, I don't want to lose games like that, it's just a waste of everyone's time. So now take a look at these shots on the Colorado. I have HE loaded, but that right there, that's what you need to expect, you know. I mean, some of these shots look like you're firing them without the target selected, which is when you have that circle around the Colorado's icon. You can see right there, the target's selected. When you have selected the target, your gunner's accuracy goes up quite a bit. So if you're not familiar with the concept, try untargeting a ship and then shooting shots at them and see how wild your dispersion is. Then switch to targeted mode again. For me, it's L1, I believe. Or R1, sorry. But it's however you target the ship where you get the circle over their icon. You know, then compare it to that, your accuracy goes up way more. Now I bumped forward here because we just sailed over this cap and it was just sailing, so let's just skip forward. But again, you know, some of these shots, not even that long range, they're going to look like you're firing against untargeted ships, which for me, that's the frustrating aspect of this. And going into the battleships, which are coming out soon, that's kind of what I'm expecting for the majority of the line, which is why now that I have Von Hipper unlocked and Ciliax unlocked, I'm going to give a very strong look to Von Hipper because he has accuracy boosts, and that's important to me to be landing shots. So I will do some in-depth commander build guides right around the launch of the battleships, and I'm going to be boosting both commanders up quite a bit and analyzing them, and once the line's released we'll go over those in depth and kind of try and discern the best builds. It's going to depend on your playstyle, but again, these Graf Spee guns, essentially German battleship guns, wildly inaccurate. Now here again, the Fuso, when he's perfectly pointed away from you, you could maybe shoot AP in there, but I mean, again, look at that dispersion. These are not long-range shots. Not bragging, I don't think it said brag. I aimed it exactly where I wanted it to aim, and we're missing these shots, so that's the frustrating part. Once he turns sideways here, though, I included the end of this game just because I wanted to show you this AP, because I want you guys to have a idea of A, where I'm shooting them, and B, the type of damage you can potentially get. I don't typically shoot for waterline citadels on these Scharnhorst guns, Graf Spee guns, same guns. You can maybe get them once in a while, but it's kind of rolling the dice. I find shooting upper hull, you're going to get upper hull shots, some superstructure mixed in. You're going to get 5, 6, 7, 8, 9k damage if you're landing numerous shells. Now he turns his attention to me, and you can see, I mean, that's a good angle right there. If there's a battleship, I survive that salvo no problem. But because we're in the heavily armored cruiser, able to wipe us right off the map. So again, toe-to-toe against battleships in the Graf Spee, not a good idea, you know. There's going to be certain situations where you're kind of forced to try and attempt that play, but that's how it's going to end up. I mean, as long as the guy can aim his shots semi-decently, you really can't stop battleship AP coming through your armor. It's just not thick enough. Next up, we have a fault line game. Again, capture the base mode. In this game, I'm going to basically just anchor down this side, and we're going to play the majority of the game over here. And because of the targets that are available, we're able to pull that off. But you do need to be cognizant of what is shooting at you at all times. Now, these are the kind of matches where going into them, you're like, ugh, because you got half the team's destroyers with a chunk of battleships. The dream matchup for the Graf Spee, 9v9, everyone's a cruiser. Because you are the biggest threat to cruisers. Maybe not the biggest threat, but you can absolutely wreck cruisers. That's what you're born to do in this ship. Destroyers, shoot at them. You know, it's when you hit them with HE shots, even with AP, depending on how that ship's angled, you're going to do some damage, and you do need to take the shots. But because you have the German battleship dispersion, the accuracy against quick-moving destroyers is not going to be exactly Yubari-like. You know, so keep that in mind. But games where it's heavily destroyer, heavily battleship-centric, you just kind of got to do what you can do, and you need to adjust your play accordingly. You know, there's just only so much you can do against those classes of ships, so keep that in mind. Right off the bat, though, first target acquired, Scharnhorst. Now, I'm not that particularly concerned about a Scharnhorst in this ship, as long as I'm not giving them like perfect broadsides. I find that angling on this ship is pretty decent. Now, this guy is shooting HE. I can't remember if he shoots at the entirety of the game or not. You'll notice there, cruiser towards my rear. I believe it's yeah, Königsberg. So I'm not concerned about that ship shooting me as long as I'm not giving them broadsides, or I'm sorry, Nuremberg. But again, if you angle this ship like a battleship towards a cruiser, it's going to have a hard time doing much damage unless it's spamming HE. And if you're playing a cruiser against an angled Graf Spee, just shoot HE at it. You're going to have a lot more success. There's another... Yeah. Again, the target was selected. These are... Normally when I get dispersion on shots like that, I'm like... there's no way you had the target selected. You know, that's the only way to miss that wildly. But there's just kind of the randomness of it. The Icarus, about the same distance, maybe a little bit closer. But we're able to, you know, land a good chunk of shots. We have a Benson point blank against that guy. No offense to my player. I'm not trying to pick on that individual player. But Benson v. Icarus should never lose that engagement. I would be very ticked off at myself. And there's the Nuremberg. That's what I think that's a 14k salvo. Broadside cruisers against this thing. Do not change your ways. You cannot be broadside against this thing, especially at shorter range shots where the actually is tightened up. The shots are going in horizontal like this. We're at 24 right now. Land another Citadel. 34. That's another 10k, 11k, whatever it was. Cannot get away with that. You saw what we did to the Atlanta in the first game. I do need to change my attention to the Icarus here. I do have someone else shooting at them, but they're not hitting the shots. And again, we fire and hit, so I mean, you never really know what you're going to get in terms of the actually. Now keep an eye on, I've been keeping an eye on that Scharnhorst on the map. I don't think he's been on the screen a whole lot. But once he gets into the 7-kilometer range, torp range on these German ships, I think across the board is 6 kilometers. So if I'm stationary, he's got to be within 6 km of me. If he starts closing in like this on me, I kick it into high gear. A lot of times when you're kiting, you kind of want to be half speed, quarter speed, 3/4, kind of switching back and forth, making it harder for them to judge and lead your target. But not with this thing. You cannot let a Scharnhorst or any German cruiser, battleship, anything close in on you, because all the German ships, to one degree or another, have very nice forward firing angles on their torpedoes. Some are better than others, but that's what they're trying to do. If they're closing in on you and they know what they're doing, they're trying to torp you. So I'm going full speed away from this guy, and we kind of sent some torps his way. Just if he continued on his path, cool, we would have hit him, but you know, he turned off, which is fine. I just need distance between me and the ship. Again, he can angle pretty well against the Scharnhorst in a long range, timed engagement of a well-angled Scharnhorst against a well-angled Graf Spee. The Scharnhorst should win, but this guy's been shooting HE at me a lot, and frankly his attention was turned otherwise, or somewhere else, I guess you would say, for the majority of this match so far. So again, once he closed in on me, we need to create distance. Now those torps almost got him. He did turn into that predicted path, but he got right outside of the range, kind of unintentionally, but that's fine. I mean, again, all these German torps on everything except for the destroyers tend to have the same range, so you can get a good feel for the distance you need to maintain. So again, we're just locking down the side. Now they're sending a lot of their ships over here. You can see on the map, I mean, our team is basically, you know, they're going towards their base, which is fine. And I'm fine just anchoring down the side. As long as they can't route us over here and punch through, I'll let those guys go at whatever speed they want to go through. Looks like they got 1 or maybe 2 ships at the most just to punch through and get to the base. Now this Norlands, he's right outside the range. That's as far as I can aim right there with the ship, so it wasn't worth me taking that shot. Fuso peeking around on the corner now. He is angling around that island, so maybe I needed to get that shot off a little bit sooner, but as soon as he turns into that angle, these are not going to do anything. I mean, I think I got bounces, misses, and 1 over pen for like 800. Scharnhorst backing up to avoid whatever else is shooting at him, though. And watch his smokestack. He does cut the engine. Now, this is a decent salvo right here. But, you know, 7.5 looks like. That's fine. You know, it's for a destroyer single salvo. That's a pretty good salvo, especially against a battleship. So, the guns, kind of, you just never know what you're going to get with these things. Those could have all easily missed. And we could have gotten, you know, 800, 0 damage, whatever it is. But if they land like that and they cooperate and the ship's broadside, you can occasionally get some pretty decent damage. Now, heretofore, we've been dealing with the Scharnhorst, we've been dealing with cruisers, destroyers. None of those ships' guns really worry me in the Graf Spee. If I'm angling properly, yeah, they're going to do some damage. But they don't induce night tears. Fuso, on the other hand, you get about 80 more millimeters on caliber compared to the Scharnhorst. The Fuso can absolutely wreck this ship. And basically any battleship except for the Scharnhorst. Yeah. Out of the games you're going to be seeing, Tier 4. Yeah, even the Iron Duke, which only has 343s. I mean, I can't recall facing off against that ship or not, but in general, ships that are classed as battleships, you don't want them shooting at you for prolonged periods. It's just going to cause problems. You did see there, we did score a hit against that New Orleans who was parked for whatever reason. And again, even at that range, you know, we were able to hit some decent shots, and I think it was about an 8K salvo. Again, this is just, you never know what you're going to get when you pull the trigger with the ship. So, if you have the patience to deal with something like that, then it won't probably bother you. I mean, for me, I just get frustrated sometimes. Because in general, I like my shots to go where I'm aiming them. And if I've missed the first salvo, I can usually adjust the second salvo and put them on target. And there again, you know, decent damage. Catastrophic, no. Could I potentially shoot waterline and hit the Citadel? Maybe. You know, there's a little bit of a dice roll on it. But the accuracy, the caliber versus the armor, for me it's just a safer shot to shoot upper hull. Try and hit those, you know, the less armored upper hull superstructure. You're getting decent damage there, and it's more reliable in my opinion, so that's just why I'm aiming where I am aiming there. Scharnhorst, I do need to switch attention there. This is what I'm talking about. This is pretty broadside to him, and I don't want to be taking those guns on pretty broadside to anything. The more, well, if you properly angle your ship against the Scharnhorst, again, I'm not saying it's not going to do any damage to you, because it will, but it's not going to be catastrophic. But broadside, that you don't want that ship to be shooting at you. And here we did get some predicted torps down. We do get the Fuso with a couple of them, so we did get the high caliber there. Up to 91k. You can see there, we're going to be switching back and forth between armor, piercing, and HE rounds. This guy does a pretty decent job of angling throughout the rest of the game. And you'll see some of these HE cells. I don't know if his superstructure is getting fairly saturated as the match goes on. You can see the superstructure is really black in there. It's possible there's less HP available in that part of the ship, which is maybe why I'm not getting some of the damage I would hope for. They were able to punch out his gun. And I don't think the first match my gun was briefly disabled. I had one match where my front turret was completely knocked out, and that just sucks. You don't want that to happen on this ship. That's 50% of your firepower. And maybe watching this game back, if this guy's going to be fishtailing and opening and closing his angles like this, it might be more profitable just to keep it on AP. Try and bait him into opening up. And, you know, right now, AP salvo at that angle, that's a fine shot, but he keeps opening and closing that angle, and I always have the wrong shell loaded because I'm switching back and forth actively. Not a lot of damage on these HE salvos though, and again I think that's a function of there not being a lot of HP left in that structure that I'm shooting, but we are able to land a fire on him there. We're up to about 100k. I think this was my highest damage game on this ship so far. Someone, I forgot who, I'm sorry, but someone on my Discord posted like 150, 170k game on this ship, which I was really impressed with. Because for me, cruisers doing double your HP is a pretty good game usually. Doing triple, I mean most cruisers of this tier you got about 30k XP, so getting a 90k game you're doing triple your base XP and damage. That's a pretty solid game. For here you have 40k, so doing doubles 80,000 damage, and that's a lot harder. And there you can see I'm trying to angle against the Fuso, but you just can't do anything about it. It's going to punch through and damage you, so that's my look at the Graf Spee. I only have it on loan for a couple weeks, so I'm not going to become a super Graf Spee player, at least not in the near future. I'm not planning on buying the ship, but I know this is going to appeal to a lot of people, so I did want to do a little bit of a deeper dive now that I have more experience with it. So I hope you guys did enjoy that video. If you did, please hit the thumbs up. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. A lot of World of Warships coming all the time. Questions for me, comments, leave them below. I always love to hear from you guys, and we'll see y'all later. Alright, peace.